Hello, everybody, and welcome to this virtual event. Talk with the 2026 winners of the Graphic Novel Advocate Award. My name is Summer Wisner, and I am the Children's Book Council (CBC) program coordinator, as well as the contact or point of contact for the Graphic Novel Committee. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today as we celebrate this year's winners. We are very delighted to have a diverse audience with us today: publishers, educators, librarians, booksellers, and fellow graphic novel enthusiasts. So thank you all again for joining this conversation. A little bit about the Graphic Novel Advocate Award. It was created to honor individuals who had exceptional dedication in advancing children's, middle grade, and young adult graphic novels as a vital literary source. If you'd like to learn more about this award or this year's winners, please go to our site, cbcbooks.org. Before we begin, a few housekeeping tips. First and foremost, this panel is being recorded and will be available on our site at a later date. We've also enabled closed captioning. If anybody would like to have that enabled on theirs, you can select it at the bottom toolbar of your screen. Without further ado, let's get this panel started. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's panel, Meg Lemke, who is the graphic novels reviews editor at Publishers Weekly and a 2025 winner of the Graphic Novel Advocate Award. Welcome, Meg, and again, thank you, or congratulations to all the winners of this year's award.
Hi, thanks, and welcome everyone to this panel. It's really my honor to be joining the three winners of this year's Graphic Novel Advocate Award. And I'm actually going to pass it to them to introduce themselves, but let me just say their names. We have Gina Gagliano, Maia Kobabe, and Andrea Miller, who represent true beautiful breadth of the artists and creators and industry folks in this burgeoning sector of our industry. So I'm going to ask them each to introduce themselves very briefly and also tell us about a comic that they loved recently that they're reading. Maya, you're up first.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from California. My name is Maia Kobabe. I'm the author of Genderqueer, a memoir, Breathe, Journeys to Healthy Binding, my short nonfiction book about trans healthcare, and the upcoming Opting Out with Lucky Srikumar from Scholastic Graphics. I am very delighted to be talking to my fellow winners and also Meg today. And the comic I am chomping through at the moment is all of Haikyuu. I'm on volume 28 out of 45.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm going to go around the square here and go to Andrea Miller.
Hi, I'm Andrea Miller. You can call me Andy. I am coming to you from Pittsboro, North Carolina, but I am originally a Philly girl. Let's see, I am a senior designer and I work on graphic novels exclusively now at Abrams Books, on the Abrams Fanfare list for kids, and as well on the Abrams ComicArts division, which includes Kana as well. So I do manga in addition to that. Um, yeah, I'm I've been doing book design for all sorts of formats for going on over, I think, over 13 years now. But graphic novels have been my bread and butter and kind of what I live and breathe and have been for a good 8 years.
Is there a book you're reading now that you love that's a comic?
Oh gosh. I actually just finished up rereading Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, which I mean is
Mhm.
shameless plug an Abrams book. But I was lucky enough to DM, design manage that project. Madeline Morales was the designer on it, who did an incredible job. The whole team was just really, really good, and it is delightful. For someone who loves period pieces, it's, set in like 1920s Chicago and New York. It's got mafia stuff and it's queer and it's dramatic and heartbreaking and beautiful. So, love
And
that
yeah, I
book.
made that a PW Picks reel recently. I'll send it to you after.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
And Gina Gagliano, who I think everyone in this audience should know already. Please welcome.
Thanks, Meg. So I think I got to know many of you on this panel and here when I was working at First Second or at Random House Graphic. And now I work as an industry consultant supporting small comics presses or small presses that do comics, places like Avery Hill and Difference Engine and Graphic Monday and Street Noise and Rosarium and Levine Corrido. And I do work on kind of multiple different fronts, helping these different independent publishers, reach people the way that every publisher should have the access and opportunity to reach readers. In addition to that, I am the outreach director for a nonprofit where I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, called the Boston Comics Art Foundation, that works to um, educate people about comics, get people making comics, make comics more part of our culture, and support local comics creators, as well as teaching in the School of Visual Arts MFA Visual Narrative program and volunteering with the We Need Diverse Books. And I'm going to talk about a book that I am working on with Levine Corrido that I love and I think you should all read. It's called The Froggy
Yes.
Library by Julie Fiveash, and it's amazing. It's so good. It's a debut graphic novel. So it's just like the delight of finding a superior new comics talent. And it's about this frog who we see pictured here on the cover. And they go home for the summer and get a summer job at the library and find themselves organizing a community archive in their Native American community. And it's so cute and heartwarming. And, it's just like the frog is just like, okay, I'm gonna like share comics with people at the library and meet people doing, community seed libraries and figure out how all this works. And really an excellent book.
I gotta say, I art directed that book and
Oh,
designed
really?
it. I love it so much. I'm so excited to see you sharing it. Yeah, I gotta second it. That book is fantastic. Just so, so, so good. And similarly, I have to say, I have known Julie and been following their work for at least 6 or 7 years after meeting them at a California Zine Fest, like before the pandemic, and I backed them on Patreon, so I've been seeing the sneak peeks and I'm very excited about it. So
Oh
you've
my
brought a
God,
popular choice to the panel, Gina.
amazing.
I mean, I think the audience is getting a glimpse of what a close community
Mm.
comics and graphic novels as an industry is. And I just want to say again, my huge congratulations to these three winners. Very deserved. And they're all people that I admire hugely in this industry and have known for a long time. So congratulations again. Round of applause.
Yay.
Meg, we
And then,
feel the same way about you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Let's get into big, hard topics right off the bat. This is a period of time when the industry is facing significant challenges, and especially around the issues of book banning and censorship attempts at a national and local level. This panel has been in the forefront of this matter, and I wanted to ask you, what do you see as some of the major challenges facing the industry at this time, and what we should do about them? So, Maya, I really want to pass this to you first because you have so particularly been at the forefront.
Yes, thank you, Meg. I am wearing my Authors Against Book Bans shirt right now, which is a wonderful author-focused organization that I've been part of since its very inception, and is so many, again, other comics industry leaders who could also end up on this panel at some point, probably, David Levithan, my Scholastic editor, and Maggie Takuta Hall, my California regional leader. I've talked to both of them a lot. And many other incredible people, authors, illustrators, editors, etc. Yes, I have been facing the book challenges very intensely for the past 5 years. And for the first couple of years of that, I never felt alone in it because a lot of authors have been challenged. And as soon as an author is challenged, we start reaching out to each other and supporting each other. But definitely an organization like Authors Against Book Bans really gave me a lot of hope for sort of the fight against censorship and the fight for freedom of speech in our country, because there's nothing like organizing together, and especially like being in a Discord or Zoom chat with a bunch of authors. You're like, oh my God, all these people are so cool and I love their books, and now we're fighting for freedom together. And it's like a really good feeling. But also, like, the situation is pretty dire. And if anyone who's listening in the audience hasn't yet heard of the House Bill 7661, which is a federal book banning bill they're trying to push through right now, which would threaten federal funding to any public school that brought in either programming or literature books that included, according to the bill's language, transgenderism or gender identity themes. So basically, this would mean any public school would have to risk their funding if they wanted to include trans inclusive books and programming material in their school. And I bet a lot of schools would be unwilling to risk that, which would basically lead to book bans and ban every book I've ever worked on from like every public school in our country. So my immediate call to action for the audience is please contact your representatives, especially in the House right now, about this HR 7661 bill. And that's like a huge challenge facing all authors, but especially queer authors right now. And then another thing I just want to mention is also just like so many graphic novel authors in particular are working at very low incomes. It takes so long to draw a graphic novel. My most recent one took 6 years. It's really hard to live on a book advance for 6 years. And many, if not the majority of cartoon and comics and graphic novel authors that I know, if they aren't married to a spouse who has a more stable job, they don't have healthcare. I personally at this time do not have healthcare. So I would say like lack of, I don't know, equitable pay and access to healthcare and things like that, I'd say are another big challenge I say facing authors in the comics industry. So
You-
please, I know my other fellow panelists have other thoughts, so please continue them.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maya. I also want to call to the attention of the audience that Summer is putting links into the chat that I think will also be posted later, where you can check out resources supplied by this group of panelists, including the ones that Maya put forward. Gina, I know you've been doing a lot of advocacy around these issues and may have others you want to bring to attention. Do you want to pick this up?
Yeah, so pulling on what Maya was saying about book bans, it's so true and real. We're seeing book banning in this country in a way that we haven't seen literally since the 50s. It's wild. Um, and I think a reason behind all of the book bans and challenges that we're seeing is because we're in a time of cultural change right now. So Jeff Trexler at the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund tells me the bans and challenges that we see are because we've won already on the cultural front. And this is just kind of the death throes of extreme and outdated conservatism. And I would like that very much to be the case. But that positive conclusion seems really tough when we're fighting new book bans all the time and new harmful legislation all the time. And I'm really proud with my work to get to share the books and support the authors who are bringing about this cultural change. And I think comics is a really important part of what is happening to make the change in the country, which is awesome. In Massachusetts, where I'm based, I represent the Boston Comics Art Foundation as part of the Mass Freedom to Read Coalition. And we work to pass laws on the state level that puts the authority over books in the school and library with teachers and librarians instead of outside interest groups. And through this work, I've kind of come to from the point of, the thing that Maya said about email your representatives being like, how could you do that? How would they even know? Like, what would happen? Like, no one would respond to an email to being like, oh yes, like that person is my representative and I'm going to an event at the State House and all of this sort of thing. And it turns out that it's really easy to get from the point of, politics that's a kind of amorphous thing that's over there to these are people who are representing me in my community, and it actually means something from them for them to hear from me. What I have heard working to pass these laws in Massachusetts is that sometimes a state representative or a national representative is like waiting to get emails and calls from their constituents before they decide what to do about a bill that has language or issues that they may not be familiar with or experienced with. So, though it can sound intimidating, definitely, sending that email is a way to go. And then I second all that you said about the money in the industry. And I think that the creative economy is a big challenge in comics and also across all of arts and literature in America today. There's so many nonprofits and foundations that are seeing funding cuts recently. There's the larger overarching reality that Maya was talking about. People working in creative professions aren't paid enough. Art and literature aren't valued enough in the country, which means that all the art and literature associated professions, from publishing to teaching to librarianship to making art and writing, though all of those aren't valued enough. And at the end of the day, I think that a central way this can change in the space for graphic novels and for books is for more people to be reading, which produces more royalties for authors, more money in the publishing ecosystem. Um, and then there's other stuff that's in the big picture that folks on this call, I have to like push a little more to effect, like more grants for authors and artists on the state and national level, a system like the library checkouts receiving royalties for authors system like Canada has. That would be so amazing. More mainstream media engagement with books to raise their profile. All of that should be happening, and it isn't happening. But we can all do something on the more people to be reading front just by talking about books, sharing books, recommending books, buying books for friends, buying books for holiday gifts, all of that to, get people to be reading, kind of infusing the book industry with simultaneous like excitement, enthusiasm, and also funding. Andy, I know you had some stuff about the creative economy that you wanted
Yeah,
to say too.
I think what I'm seeing from inside the publishing, mechanism reflects everything that you both have been describing in that, advances are, as good as we generally can offer, but they're not terribly high, especially given how long it takes to make a book. And then on the flip side, oftentimes we're looking at requests for especially like younger series, like middle grade series, to be put out on a very fast pace, a very quick timeline. And the only way for that to be done in a way that does not cause injury to the creator is to then bring in more and more art assistants, which then breaks up the fee even further. And I think, the idea of having more assistants is incredible. Those people make everything function and allow, mountains to be moved. But at the same time, I do think that there's a lot of education internally on graphic novels that you'd be surprised probably still needs to be done. Having to explain sometimes to folks who aren't as familiar with the comic format that, this, it's more work than a picture book, right? And so we know that picture books sometimes get 2 to 3 years, and then they want a graphic novel done in the same amount of time, and you find yourself explaining, well, a picture book is 32 pages, and this is a 320 page graphic novel, or 300, so this is 10 times that much, uh, right? So, there's a lot of learning that I think is happening. We're really fortunate, I will say, that since I started to now, that there are so many more people working with comics and learning and understanding and spreading their knowledge. That we don't have that learning curve as much anymore, but it is still there. So, between that, the expectations are just really rough. And I do think, Gina, that you're correct that, um, at the end of the day, at least from the publishing perspective, that it's a numbers game, right? Like it's expensive to produce a four-color book, even if you're printing it in China where it's cheapest, which I will also say introduces other censorship factors. that in and of itself. So there's a lot of things that are all interlinked, whether it's, how we uh, choose what to include in a book and strike from it in order to allow it to be made in the first place, how much it costs to do that, and what the creator gets. And I think the best thing that we can offer to viewers, like to all of you in the community, is to ask for your support, because the only way we can encourage our team internally to see the value of the book is to point to, look how well the book did,
Yeah.
right? That's true. I think, we all see like, oh, Netflix canceled something after one season, even though a bunch of us watched it because we didn't all watch it the first week. Same thing in books. If the book doesn't sell well up front, then there might be more reticence to taking more risks. So the more that you support your authors, do the pre-order campaigns when they're out there, like asking for them, that really helps prove that there is a desire, because we know there is. We see people show up to libraries, to comic, gatherings. Kids love comics, like everyone does. So we just need to see that reflected in the economy, which is kind of,
Yeah.
Um,
And I also feel like that is not an impossible ask, and
yeah.
it feels tough. And as a person who has worked in marketing and publicity and outreach and publishing, like just the like how you get more people to read books is always the question that we all have working on books. But when we're in a situation in publishing where a graphic novel that maybe wins a state award, gets 4-starred reviews, can sell 20,000 copies, 30,000 copies, and publishers can be like, oh, look, like this is good. Like this is so much better than the majority of our list. And then you think about the US population, which my phone is telling me is currently estimated as of March 2026 to be under 342 million. There's so much room there to grow that readership,
Yeah.
just a little. Like we're not being like, oh, like what if that 20,000 copy book was selling 342 million copies?
If
Right.
only.
That would
Oh
be
man.
amazing. Like maybe like 100,000 copies is the, this book has 4-star reviews and has, been on an American Library Association reading list. Like that would be a great baseline to go from.
Right.
so I'm hearing support books, support your local indies, and then talk about them online and talk about them if you're a librarian to your groups that give awards, which is a major part of the CBC audience. And I know just what a little thank you, librarians. Last year's award winners was heavily librarian, and you really see where that advocacy matters and speaks back to publishers. You've all answered basically my next three
I
questions, but
do actually have one
oh, go
more
ahead, Gina.
challenge to bring up, which
Meg,
I
it's
feel
because
like,
every single piece is woven together.
I know,
It's
I
like
know.
the bands are just connected to the sales, are connected to the author health, connected to the advances, connected to the sales, connected to international. It's like a big web.
yeah. So underlying all this web, I think a big challenge that all of us on this panel, all of you, all of us in this country are dealing with now is the rise of authoritarianism.
Yes.
And the United States is dealing with this rise of authoritarianism. Basically, everything about it is bad. It's specifically bad for publishing, not just because it's a hard time to be creative when you have constant crisis going on all around you. Right now, I have people in the industry emailing me to say they don't have time for comics work because they have to do other necessary political work to keep themselves and their families safe. Authors saying that they can't make the comics they want to make about their own lives for fear of repercussions from the government. And authors based in other countries who I work with who are winning awards, who are getting grants, saying they can't travel to the United States for fear of their own safety while they're here.
Yes.
And comics is such a wonderful, supportive, and welcoming community, but the world around us is such a big place, and it often feels like our own voices are really small in comparison to what's happening everywhere. So all of this is incredibly depressing. And that leads to, I think, another important challenge that kind of pairs with that, which is finding joy in this and maintaining our excitement and enthusiasm for comics and graphic novels and for reading while in this really challenging time, people need stories more than ever.
Yes.
If this is a fantastic industry, it's filled with amazing people who publish graphic novels, phenomenal cartoonists who are telling wonderful stories. And I hope that picking up a comic and reading, or talking to friends or students or library patrons about books and comics can spark some of that joy for all of us and kind of bring us together when everything in the world that's going around us is so terrible.
I'd love to pick up on that with examples of other like specific success stories where publishers and industry folks and authors and readers have come together. Andy, I know you had one you mentioned about the unionization at Abrams.
Yeah, that was a big part of all of last year and going into this year. So at Abrams, we organized and worked really hard and were able to start a chapter of a union with Local 2110, the same union actually that represents HarperCollins workers, for those who might remember
Yes.
that. And the fun thing is HarperCollins is Abrams' upstairs neighbor in New York. I'm not in that office, but we do share the same building. Um, and yeah, it was a huge, really empowering effort. All of us got to, meet each other in a way and like talk about our concerns in a way that I think we hadn't before. But when it came time to actually do the drive to ask people to vote yes on the campaign, and to fight back against misinformation that was floating around at the time, we leaned on our contacts, authors, illustrators, booksellers, librarians, and we got people to sign letters that were sent into management. And, people were really supportive on social media. And again, this was us really just learning from what the HarperCollins Union had done in years prior. We saw the motivation and the outpouring of support from the bookmaking community come in and help them. And they actually just ratified a new contract that has some incredible wins. And that is from, the strike that they had had several years back, but also that was able to happen because of the support that the community gave them. So, whether it's our union specifically or just in general, looking to improve workers' rights and the internal publishing situation, it's really empowering to see that the people that we collaborate with are willing to go to bat for us. And in turn, I will say, at least on my own part, and I know a lot of my colleagues, like everybody does, we try to go to bat for our collaborators, for our artists and authors, trying to get them, again, that living wage, a good timeline, reasonable, asks, and all of these things, trying to make sure that they are able to make the best book that they can and in a healthy way. So yeah, we're always kind of hopefully looking out for each other. We've got each other's backs.
Maya, if I can pass the same question with a little twist to you, I wondered if you had a success story and maybe one that was about an experience you had with a reader, if that's something you feel comfortable pulling up. Partly because I want to thank the audience members. We got questions in advance from RSVPs, and one of them was, how did Maya feel putting her personal experience out into the world? And I thought that could be part of a successful moment for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that specifically, like even though my book has been one of the most challenged books in the US 3 out of the past 4 years and has been heavily criticized in media and Fox News and all of this noise, even at like the height of the book ban intensity, I was still receiving like 5 to 1 or even 10 to 1 more like messages of like love and support, like fan letters than hate mail on social media. And like even at like the height of the sort of like book ban nastiness, more people were reaching out to me to say, like I absolutely loved your book, or like I really related to it, or is the first book I ever related to, or reading your book helped me, come out to my parents, or reading your book opened up a conversation with my partner that I've never had before. This is kind of like really powerful, like emotional responses that every author like yearns to receive and is so moved to receive because, any writing project is generally a pretty solo endeavor. Like I work from home. I mostly am just in my own house, drawing comics all day, hoping that they'll connect with people, hoping they'll speak to people, but never knowing for sure until you do get that reader feedback when people say, like, I did read the book. It did touch me. It was meaningful to me. I read it twice. I cried, all of these sorts of responses. And I have absolutely received every kind of one of those, like really powerful, meaningful reader responses. And that's always incredible. And it does help ground me, like when I get caught up in, you know, federal level book ban bills and like state level issues and all of this, like to be like, remember why you write books is for the reader. It's to build that bridge between one human voice and another human voice. And like the relationship of, an individual reader with a book can be such a personal one. You're like holding it in your hands and you're, like speaking with the text and building your own relationship with the text. And I've absolutely had many, many of those experiences, far more than I've had of receiving like hate mail or mean comments online or anything. Um, so that's really wonderful. And then a couple of other like just sort of like organizing wins or things that make me hopeful that I wanted to mention is in addition to Authors Against Book Bans, which has had a couple really great wins on the state level in the past 2 to 3 years, there's been book protection legislation passed in definitely Colorado and Rhode Island that AABB
11 states
members.
now.
Yeah, I say there's been multiple states where they're either it's passed or people have it working up through the legislation at this time. So there's been some really great like state level book protection legislation passed. I'm also part of another group, formerly the Cartoonist Co-op, now Cartoonists United, which is a big sort of like loose organization of cartoonists online that are kind of trying to serve. It's not really possible for cartoonists to unionize at this time because we're all freelance contractors and we work for a bunch of different publishers, but we're trying to do a lot of that same kind of knowledge sharing of resources, like mentorship that a union might be able to offer. And it's been really great to be part of that group as well. And that group has also been, I would say, more and more active. And I personally did contribute to the recent Cartoonists United statement against censorship that put out. I was one of the people who like helped draft some of that language. And I'll also be participating in a panel about it like later on in the year. So it's been really great to be part of that group as well.
Yeah, I think when we think about what's a call to action, what can you do? Just doing anything,
Yeah, just get
sharing
your
your
foot in
story
somewhere.
is great. I recently did an advocacy day with Mass Freedom to Read at the Boston, Massachusetts State House, and the most frequent response we got from people who came by the book fair, from legislative aides, was like, book banning, is this happening here? And it is. Book banning is happening in Massachusetts. Multiple graphic novelists, including Maia, have had their work banned or challenged in Massachusetts. People just don't know that that's happening, and we have to raise our voices and inform them. If you are also inspired by this conversation, I can also recommend going to a No Kings protest this weekend. And you can even have a sign that's like no kings and no book bans. And um, Publishers Weekly, where Meg works, has a wonderful picture of the day feature. They always love spotlighting people doing literary activism. I bet if they get like 20 different photos of people from No Kings with book signs, they would potentially do a whole carousel of things. So I don't want to promise that for you, Meg, but I'm sure that they would love to receive a flood of photos from amazing publishing people, teachers, and librarians, all working to raise up the horrors of book bans this weekend. So I just, getting out, being in community with people, it's an amazing thing, and there's opportunities all the time.
We can say no kings, yes comics.
Yeah.
So another question we got from the audience RSVPs, which we were talking as a group about the wording of, was very specific and interesting way. What makes a graphic novel stand out among this wide range of the genre and the increasingly popular manga? Which I think can also be answered as what makes a manga stand out among all the manga. But do you think they're speaking possibly as a librarian? I don't know, but how do you deal with the fire hose of comics, honestly, coming in? And what makes one of them really stand out and be a book you want people to be reading in public?
Mm. Well, I did want to, this was one that I was particularly focused in on because I work on manga and American graphic novels. And American is not even a great descriptor because I think one of the things I was thinking about with this was the fact that so many of the books that I'm actively working on that I'm seeing coming through are books that are in translation. I see a lot that are coming from Spain, from Belgium, from France, but also tons and tons from Japan, Korea, China. So we have manga, manhwa, and also a ton of what we call scroll to print conversion.
Ah,
So if
yes.
you're someone who loves your webtoons or your tapas, that's a whole new niche industry where there's like a bunch of us designers who've got like three guys who know how to do it. And so like that's its own huge task. Um, the thing that really intrigues me is that, especially as someone who went to art school as an illustrator, at least back in my day, uh, people who drew in an anime or manga style were somewhat derided by the faculty at the time. But it's a visual language that more and more everyone who I would say, or at least most children, if not a lot of people of I'm peak millennial, like so we kind of know that visual language. It's baked into um everything that we see nowadays, especially with cartoons, like in animation, but also in the comics that we read. You know, it's interesting seeing manga and graphic novels separated, right? Because
Yeah.
manga just means comics. That's literally the word is comic. And so having them separated is intriguing to me. And at the same time, they very much are their own category. They're shelved separately. They cover different topics and, different viewpoints. And they're just culturally different too. Um, so I don't know if I have an answer for this in terms of like how things stand out within each category because they are each very different. Um, but it's intriguing to me that they are separate and at the same time I don't know if they necessarily should be moved together. They are cataloged together um in the bestseller list, and so every time we look at like the New York Times bestsellers, it's going to be like Chainsaw Man, like Jujutsu Kaisen, and then you know, like one Dave Pilkey book, but it's like mostly it's mostly manga. And because those books also are so they're such long, like to Maya's point of reading all of Haikyuu, like they're just incredibly long,
Yeah.
digestible, small and one color books. They're very much a different thing than what we do generally within traditional publishing. We're seeing more and more of traditional publishers want to do manga style comics that are original
Mhm.
with creators like from the States or from like English speaking. It's just very interesting. So I guess this is more of me just giving you a pulse on the status of graphic novels and manga right now because there's so much interest, there's so much enthusiasm, and you're watching one part of the industry trying to kind of draw more inspiration from the other one while still standing alone and separate. And it's really, really intriguing.
I also want to say I read this question as it was presented as an RSVP, and they had written this wide range of the genre, but really what we would say is of genres because we don't
Mm.
call comics a genre,
Right,
we
a
call comics
format.
medium,
Mhm.
yeah, or format.
Yeah.
And I do think sometimes people do speak about manga as its own medium or format, but also
Mm.
comics.
You're right.
But I think what we repeat all the time at Publishers Weekly is that comics is a format that crosses so many genres. So
Mhm.
Gina, what do you think? What makes a book stand out? And how do you were working all the time to refine that in your pitches to publish, to publicity and media?
Yeah, so for me as a lifelong reader, the read is always what makes the book stand out for me. Just reading a book when you read it and you love it and you're just like, look, like this frog is so good. And then you want to talk about it to everyone. I mean, there's all these people who do like metrics on publishing and readership, and the number one most frequent reason why people say they pick up a book is that their friend loved it and recommended it and talked to them about it. So I think that reading something and sharing it with people is extremely powerful. Uh, and I just want to say that to all of us. I know all of us who are comics creators working in reviews like Meg, publishing, teachers, librarians, you're all sharing those books. And that's like one of the most powerful things that you can do to help books get out there. And it's also one of the reasons why manga is so popular, because so many people are reading it, and it just all every reader talks to their friends and generates new readers and new excitement.
Yeah, I would say I am also a very prolific reader. I read between 100 and 150 books a year and have for over 20 years. I also write a short book review of pretty much every single thing I read on both Goodreads and Storygraph because I do want to be shouting about the books that I loved and telling people about them. And before I was a full-time freelance author, I was a part-time librarian. So I think I have that book recommendation desire in my heart. And I think the things that, yeah, make a comic stand out to me, whether it's manga or non-manga, Western English language original story, is like I really like stories that have like that have yeah, like just like personal, authentic human emotions, whether that is a story about high school volleyball players or someone, coming out to their family, like whether like if it's about sports, it's about relationships, it's about cooking, it's a fantasy, sci-fi, mystery, any whatever. Like I'm looking for a human story. And I think especially in this like AI slop era, I want a story that is another human telling me what it's like to be human from their point of view and something about what it's like to be alive in from their point of view, whether that's like a fictional story or memoir, nonfiction, etc. I'm just looking for like a good human story. And of course, to me personally, another huge draw is if it is queer or explores trans, non-binary, gender fluid, etc. identities. I am like at least 50% more likely to pick up the book if it is queer. But that's sort of a personal taste thing. I also really love reading many, many genres. And I think actually in comics, if I'm reading in the comic format, the amount of genres I'm willing to dip into is actually wider than I might be willing to in prose. And part of that is because a comic takes like less time to read. So like I might not pick up I'm not gonna can't think of a great example, of course, but like I might not pick up a specific book about something in prose just because I'm like the time investment, am I that interested? But in comics, especially if I like the art style, I'm like, no, I'll give it a try. I'll read about that niche subject that I might not have a specific already existing personal draw towards, but like the art looks good. I'll give it a shot. And then sometimes I become like very, very engaged with it.
Yeah, just really quickly jumping in on this, because I feel like I gave such a non sequitur, the thing that makes things jump out for me, and maybe it's obvious, but a good cover,
Hmm.
like good art, and I think to everyone else's point also, like one of the things that graphic novels very obviously have working for them is the fact that the art is an equal, if not even more of in the forefront of the storytelling. And so, I get excited when I open a book and I see interesting paneling. I see someone doing something with the comics, medium that is more than just like blocks on a page. And if someone's just doing like 4 blocks on a page, there are ways of doing that that are so engaging, clever, interesting, like good character, good color, whatever it is. Like I think to Maya's point about AI slop, like I know when I'm looking at an AI generated comic book page because it looks bad. It's the lettering is bad, the framing is bad, and there are so many different elements to my earlier point about having assistants. Like the letterer can make or break a book for me, like the coloring can make or break it. All of these things have to be in perfect balance and work together well. So, I think, comics, it's really a full package thing. It's got to be a good read, it's got to look good, and it's got to communicate well.
Yeah, in comics, people definitely will. Readers will judge your book by its cover.
Hmm.
So, a question we got in various forums that I've refined down in the RSVP's chat is what is it like in your daily life as an advocate, someone in the industry, an artist? And because we're coming towards the end of our time together, maybe just pick one unexpected example of what you do in your daily life, your daily work, that maybe is something people don't know about being in the industry. And Gina, do you want to pick it up?
Sure. So I don't know if this is something that people don't know. I feel like I'm going to say this and everyone's going to be like, oh, yeah, same. So my workday summary is email. I work with 6 awesome independent publishers on their comics program on a regular day. I spend half to 3/4 of my time emailing people about media, about events, about planning, about outreach, about blurbs, about copy, about festivals, about cover design, about editing, about promotional materials, about distribution, about schedule planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The rest of my time I spend having meetings with people. um,
And in the evenings you read, I hope.
Yes. Or, get out to book events, see people, cook things, all of that. So, as an advocate, like part of the advocacy I do is working for these publishers, advocating for them, for their authors. And then the other part of my job is working with the local organization, the Boston Comics Art Foundation, the New England-based nonprofit that champions the comics format. So I'm the outreach director there, and I work with an amazing team to get more people reading comics and making comics and support the local comics community with festivals and professional development and grants and awards and educational opportunities. So, as well as reading in the evening, I do that too.
Maya, what's something people might not know about being a working cartoonist?
Oh gosh. Well, like I said, I work from home. My normal day involves not changing out of my pajamas unless I have a Zoom meeting, and as much as possible spending a biggest percentage of I can per day drawing, usually while listening to audiobooks, or podcasts or talking to friends on the phone. Unfortunately, a bigger and bigger chunk of my day is also taken up by emailing, especially because this is a book release year for me. So I have Opting Out coming out in May, as well. We're also releasing the annotated edition of Genderqueer in May for the 7th anniversary of the book. So there's a lot. I'm doing a lot of event planning, emailing as well. But one thing I might say that's been really fun is that as a published author, people then reach out to me with like slightly more interesting
Mm,
opportunities. So at the moment, I'm also mentoring a thesis student at the Center for Cartoon Studies. And so I meet twice a month with a thesis student who's working on a graphic novel project. And that's really fun for me to suddenly be like the mentor, the teacher to like a younger up and coming cartoonist. And I'm also at this moment editing a series of short nonfiction comics about censorship for Extra, which is a Canadian online magazine that got some of that sweet, sweet Canadian grant money. And for the first ever time, I'm actually being paid as an editor of comics instead of the writer of
mhm.
comics, which is very cool and fun for me to be like on sort of the other side of that author editorial relationship. And so I got to be the one who was like online looking for artists I wanted to hire and reaching out for pitches. And now I'm like receiving my manuscripts and like offering notes. And so I'm just having like a really good time being like a mentor and an editor as well as like an author illustrator right now. So
I was just looking up Opting Out Star Review at Publishers Weekly, and it was also one of my top picks for the anticipated books coming out this spring. So please, everyone
thanks,
listening.
Meg.
Um, Andy, what about you? I think that your work is perhaps the most shrouded in mystery for folks who read comics. What does it mean to be able to help put them together?
Yeah, everyone is always like, so wait, what do you do? Um, so I mean, as a book designer, I think that yeah, we do have one of the most opaque, weird jobs in the industry. In that, I'm not drawing the book, I'm not doing the lettering, although I have done lettering and I do know how to draw, but those neither of those are my responsibility. So I am somewhat air traffic control, making sure that the people who are doing the lettering get the lettering done, and the people who are doing the drawing get the drawing done, and that the files make it into me in the right format, like set up properly. I do a lot of technical stuff, I'm kind of one of our in-house guys that's really passionate about making sure that things are set up properly for two-color and three-color books. And so I also do a fair amount of kind of teaching and tutoring and getting together materials so that people understand how to provide files to me so that they are ready for print. And my actual job is really like, aside from a ton of emails and a ton of meetings, just like Gina, and just like Maya, there's a lot of actual like design and art direction that I get to do. So taking the artwork, taking the text, and placing them into an InDesign layout, and getting it all formatted and ready to go to press. And then I review proofs and make corrections when we, miss things or make mistakes. Um, and then I feel like the big thing that I really enjoy doing is just the cover design process, which, is can take months sometimes because we bring things for review internally, get loads and loads of feedback over multiple rounds, and I work with the author to refine it. I really love hand lettering. So that's the one thing where I try to like give myself a little treat where I get to, still flex my drawing and creative muscles and can, you know, give it an extra touch to really marry the text to the artwork. So, yeah, that's generally what I'm doing from, 9 to 5, which usually is more like, 6:30. And then I also do freelance work. So I work very long hours. But while I'm doing this, I'm also usually in podcast zone or have something going on like in the evening. I'm usually sitting with my partner, who is a comic letterer, and we'll be sitting watching TV together, working side by side. So it's just comics from like morning until I go to bed.
So you can imagine one of the biggest repeat questions we got from the audience was, what's a book that we need to get for our library, our school? And it could be a favorite, a classic, or upcoming. We have just a few minutes really left. So if everyone could take 1 minute to shout out one or two classic book that you think every librarian should have, and a book coming up that you're excited about that we haven't already heard about from you. Gina, you want to go first?
Sure. I want to spotlight one of the books I am working on that's coming up from the Singapore-based graphic novel publisher Difference Engine. And they're a really awesome publisher who are just getting their start in the US, who are dedicated to sharing independent comics created by South Asian authors who are based in South Asia and kind of expanding the world for those stories and experiences. So we have a graphic novel called To the Less Graham that's coming out this spring by Shreya Davies and Vanessa Wong. And it discusses the intersection of body image and eating disorder and BIPOC identity. And it's a really strong and emotional book. And I'm so excited to get to share it with people. Um, as far as a classic, my favorite graphic novel of all time is Sarah Barron's Robot Dreams, which everyone should read if they haven't read it already. And if you have read it already, then you should watch the movie, which somehow is as good as the book. It's shocking. And Sarah Barron is a genius, and that book is phenomenal.
Maya, you want to shout out a book or
Yes.
two?
Yes, I have some titles. I was gonna say another thing actually is that as an author, I get asked to blurb books pretty often, so I do get to read things before they come out. So one thing that's already out, but that I blurbed that came out in February that I love is Wake Now in the Fire, which is written by Jarrett Dapier and illustrated by AJ Dungo, I believe. And that is from 10 Speed Press, and it's a book, it's a fictional book about book censorship in schools, but based on a real event that happened over 10 years ago in the Chicago public school system when they banned Persepolis, a comic. So it's a comic about comic censorship. And though it is fictional, I think it really captures a really whole picture of specifically student activism in schools to defend their own like rights of, free speech, access of information, access to books, etc. And it's really good. And then two books that are upcoming that I blurbed and really, or that I've gotten to read advance. One of them is Queer and How We Got Here by Hazel Newlevant, which is upcoming, I believe, in May. And it is a mix of a memoir from Hazel Newlevant, who is a queer, non-binary trans author and also was an acquiring editor for Genderqueer when they used to work at Lionforge. Again, the interweaving of the comics industry. And it's really great, but mixed with like queer history, specifically US queer history. Um, it's funny, it's stylish, it's informational. And then I have to shout out my fellow Scholastic Graphics upcoming title, Midsummer Sisters by Nikki Smith, which is coming out in June, which is a story of two stepsisters whose parents are like separating. And it's like over one summer where they're really wrestling, like if their parents who are like separate and they are not biologically related, like what happens to their sisterhood. I was really touched by this book. It's beautifully illustrated. It's got wild horses and summer vibes and sibling relationships. And so I would highly recommend that one as well.
Andy, jump in.
All right, I'm gonna try and be fast. So let's see, upcoming ones slash ones that I've worked on that I really, really love. So for the younger set, the Batcat series by Maggie Ram. They are just, I mean, also a fellow book designer, so love that. But also, those books are just delightful. And there are four of them, the fourth of which is coming out, I think, very soon. So to yeah, keep your eyes out for Batcat Seeing Stars. That's the fourth one. Also just a tearjerker, beautiful and consistently hilarious. Um, for I would say like teens, I really, really love the When Monsters Wake series that Abrams is putting out. The first book, Children of the Night, launched very recently. And we're working on the follow-up right now, which is so the first one was like a Dracula retelling. Second one is going to be Frankenstein. They're queer, they're fantastic ensemble casts, and also just great storytelling and art. And then what else did I have for you? Um, oh, super, super upcoming. Like, I'm not sure that this one has, I think it's been announced. But Fox River Comics Camp is coming out in, I believe, fall of 26. We're working on that. Like the files just went to the printer this week, but this is going to be by Kathy G. Johnson, who is amazing. This book is basically like how to draw, like it's like Scott McCloud, but for like 8-year-olds. It's so good. It is so fun, so accessible, and I think also just great for anybody who is going to, especially for librarians, people who want to have class like curricula or work for kids to do comics and make it themselves. There are worksheets in the back. It's great. So those would be I think the three that I would call out right now. As far as a classic one, just a personal favorite. I love anything Jen Wang does, so Prince and the Dressmaker. Love that book so much.
Thank you, Andy. I mean,
Yeah.
looking for Kathy's book coming out. That's Fanfare.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everything I mentioned was Fanfare, except for Prince and the Dressmaker.
Most of the books I think that have been mentioned are also in our Publishers Weekly upcoming previews. So I'll put a link to that to summer too. And we are at time. Nice job, crew. I want to say huge congratulations again to this esteemed panel and group of winners for the Graphic Novel Advocate Award. Thank you all. And thank you to the audience for joining us this year for the panel.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Meg.
Thank you so
This was
much.
wonderful. We could have talked for another hour easily.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Thank you all for your amazing work, for all the advocacy that you're doing, that you people on the panel are doing, that you people in the audience are doing. And I feel like we just all have to step forward together to get more people to read comics and build our reading communities to help change things in this country.
Yeah, I feel really fortunate. Like we mentioned, comics is just it's a tiny community, but at the same time, it reaches out and touches everyone at the same time. So I feel really, really fortunate to be part of it with all of you.
Strong
Yes.
but mighty. Strong, small, small, strong, and mighty. All of those things.
Exactly.
Yes.
We've been instructed just to wave goodbye.
Okay.
Okay,
Bye,
Okay.
everyone. Have a good rest of your
farewell.
day.